thanks, Michael, and I want to thank the organizers. I really appreciate the opportunity to be here. So conventional MRI systems right now in hospitals can be used to map neural responses in the spinal cord with functional MRI. The reason for pursuing this in the spinal cord is that this method might be able to give us better assessments of spinal cord function after injury or disease. And even at any level of spinal cord, it doesn't matter if you're above or below the level of injury or lesion, wherever, you can assess the entire cord. It might hopefully provide a better outcome measure also for clinical trials of novel treatment strategies. And that's kind of a theme that's been repeated sometimes through some of the talks today. And so we're kind of pursuing this, trying to develop this into a method. Now, what is functional MRI? It's it shows up in movies and on TV, and unfortunately it's very accurate in movies, or inaccurate in movies. It's just an application of conventional MRI. You can do it with any any modern day MRI system can do it. It's just another application. Just instead of doing static anatomical images, we get images required repeatedly in time. We want to do it quickly in time, so we usually give up some image quality, some spatial resolution, so we can get high speed, and we do a time series. And this is, if you've heard of brain fMRI, which is much more common, it's really the same thing. We just have made a few key adaptations to make it work in the spinal cord. Now, during these repeated image acquisitions, you can almost think of it like a short movie, like between 5 to 10 minutes. The person we're studying performs a task or has repeated sensations or something to modulate neural activity, the part we're interested in. And we do this repeatedly in time. Now, often we'll use motor tasks or mild temperature, touch, brush, vibration, sensation, things like that. We need to do this in the confined environment of the MRI system and within the limitations of being inside a strong magnetic field. So we don't want to have any body movement. So we're limited. A lot of work I do is with thermal sensation. Here's just a picture of our thermometer on a hand, just to modulate the temperature, so you get a temperature sensation. Here's a healthy volunteer, a former grad student, happily volunteering for a study. And here's thermodes attached to her shoulder and on her hand. And so we can target two levels, two dermatomes in the spinal cord. And we have the same thing, two other thermodes directly symmetrically on the other side of the body. So we can look at right and left comparisons. Within each we do a 7-minute fMRI run. And so we're looking at 4 different dermatomes at the same time and the distribution of activity they produce. What we're really detecting with the fMRI is changes in metabolic activity in response to the task or stimulus. There's kind of a sequence of events that creates a subtle change in the MRI images related to this change in metabolic activity. And it's subtle, but by kind of repeating things in time, in a pattern, kind of an on-off pattern, there's a block design where we might modulate the temperature from skin temperature, increase it to 44 degrees hold for 45 seconds, then let it cool passively, and then repeat this a few times. And even though it's subtle, if we look for areas of the images that correspond to these changes, we can infer that they're related to these changes that's involved in neural activity. So I'm not going to talk any more about methods. I want to jump right into results. These are what our results look like. This is from a healthy, an uninjured volunteer. And these images, these are showing for left-hand stimulation and right-hand stimulation. There are 13 axial slices corresponding to this little region right here, about the C8 spinal cord segment. These are 13 slices depicting the 3D distribution in a 13-millimeter span. So each slice spans 1 millimeter. And you can see, I'm going to zoom in a second, these are little teeny colored areas showing the areas that actually respond with these temperature changes. And these slices, just zoomed in here, these are in radiological orientation. So they're kind of inverted from normal histological orientation. But here's our characteristic spinal cord cross-section with the gray matter butterfly shape in the center. As you can see, it corresponds here, the gray region is the cord itself, the gray area around it is the cerebral spinal fluid. And the right side of the body is to the left and the dorsal side is down. So we see areas like this. Here's the right dorsal activity, kind of near the tip of the right dorsal horn. Now here's our time course pattern we're looking for now each of the 4 areas we stimulate gets a different pattern in time that are distinct, so we can identify each of the 4 responses. And we know they're not going to be limited to one particular dermatome, they're going to spread up segments and into brainstem regions. So here's our average time course response just for these areas colored in here. And here we can see we have a nice correspondence with our timing pattern, and same thing on the left hand. We get a different pattern of activity when we stimulate left hand or right hand. And we'll just take a closer look in. Here we see left hand stimulation, right hand stimulation. We can see the patterns of activity switch sides nicely when we stimulate different sides. And just kind of trying to highlight, you can see these, get to the right spot. You can see these areas, they're colored in. So hopefully, I always get comments at the end of my talk, I couldn't see the little colored dots. Well, hopefully you can notice them now. There's the areas that are responding with these time course patterns. And we can see responses that are distinct for right or left-hand stimulation. Now in this same person, now this is around, what I showed you before, that was about the C8 level, we're stimulating the hand. We also looked about 2 segments up. This is about the C5, C6 level, about 2 segments up. We consistently also see activity a couple of segments up higher in each person. Here's also right-hand stimulation. We get a nice time course pattern. Here we see our activity. Left-hand stimulation, another distinct pattern of where the activity is. 2 segments up. We can also look higher up in the rostral medulla. Now I've just picked specific regions to look at. We can't show the whole 3D distribution, it would take too long. But we do see up in the rostral medulla important areas of activity that again are shown up for right-hand and left-hand stimulation and are distinct for the 2 sides. And all these time courses I'm showing, they're all to the same scale. So you can see here's again nice responses corresponding to the pattern of stimulation, but they tend to get smaller and smaller in magnitude as we move up into the brainstem regions. Now in comparison, well, I guess I'm zooming in. Yeah, now in comparison, here's a person with a sensory incomplete injury. I've just picked a few specific examples to show. This is an age of C injury, and this again stimulating the right and left hand and looking at about the C8 level. So we're just below the level of injury. I don't know if I showed it very clearly. You can see the cross-sectional anatomy of the cord changing right at the edge of the injury, or as we go down, the cord cross-sections look a little bit more normal. We do see areas of activity here in response to the right hand and left hand stimulation, and it's below the level of injury, but we can see the time course patterns are very messy. So it's I'd say at the very least it's altered activity. These are unclear patterns of activity, what this really means. We do see distinct responses to right and left hand stimulation. But then just like the healthy person, we look 2 segments, I guess I'm zooming in again so you can really take a good look. There we go. Okay. 2 segments up. I think I'm going to zoom in again. There we go. 2 segments up. On the left-hand side, well, it's a very messy looking response. Like maybe there's something there, but when I look at this, I see most of these areas are right at the very edge of the cord. When we're looking at the edge or out in the CSF, these are areas that we don't trust very much. We're looking for areas that are right in the cord. This is more likely. Okay, it's not quite so much on the edge of the cord, and we get a nice clean response. So we're seeing, with right-hand stimulation, 2 segments up to above the level of injury now. With this, we are seeing a response on the right-hand side, very questionable on the left-hand side. So the difference with the side of the hand we're stimulating. Same thing, look at the rostral medulla. We do see responses, fairly nice clean-looking responses, more on the right side than the left, but I'd say there probably is, here's left side stimulation, right side stimulation, and you can see there is a distinct pattern to the 2 sides. So this is, we can see it's different in the healthy people, but we do see evidence of some activity even projecting beyond the injury level. Now, in comparison, here's a sensory complete injury, rated an ASIA A injury. Now, in this example, for these 3, we've actually stimulated the same location of the body, looking at the same region. And for this example, this might have actually been too high a dermatome level to really look at this person. We really are right within the injury region. You can see by the cross-section. As we get lower down in his, again, 13 millimeter span, we get lower down in this region. We are looking at a little bit more normal cross-section. You can see it's still affected. We're a little bit too high for this. We really don't see much activity. There's a messy pattern. We do see areas that are along the edge of the cord. So it's very questionable if there is any activity at all. So I'd say this is really absent or at least altered. I wouldn't put too much faith that this is actual activity. It looks like we're not detecting any activity on either side here. Same thing, 2 segments up. And this is right on the edge. Is there activity? No, I want to jump back to it. You can see the time course. There is a bit of a time course response, but is it a clean time course response? It looks to me like it's on the edge. Same thing for the other side. It's a low response, not like we saw in healthy people at all. Especially here, it's very on the edge. So really absent on both sides. Not seeing evidence of this activity projecting up beyond the injury level. And then same thing, rostral medulla is really, do we trust any activity here? It's like these are such low time course responses. As I say, not really. It's not really there. So this is seeming fairly consistent with this being a complete injury. Now maybe we get a different story. If we stimulated lower in the cord, we could see more. But for where we stimulated, we don't really see any evidence of activity spreading up. Nothing conclusive getting beyond, projecting beyond the injury level. Now just to round this up, We also had activity when we stimulated shoulders in all these people. So now in each of these cases, we get the healthy person, the uninjured person, the age of C and the age of A injury examples. We're stimulating above the level of injury now. Just to round this up, for what we see in terms of the responses for shoulder stimulation, right and left sides, you can see there are responses, but again, it's still messy kind of in the age of C person. I'll just zoom in quickly on these. The uninjured up here, looking at the right hand activity, see a fairly typical response. In the age of C here, this is really off the cord. This is out in the CSF. Now the reasons there be false positive results out in the CSF that are different than in the cord, this doesn't worry me, but I pay attention more inside the cord. We don't really see anything. Whereas in the age of A person, we do have a nice distinct response, and again, we're above the level of injury. Look at left-hand side, we see nice switch, nice laterality, switch left-hand to right-handed stimulation in the uninjured person. Also in the age of A person, we see nice shift of sides where the activity is with right-hand, left-hand, or shoulder stimulation. Whereas in the age of C person, it looks like we're close enough to the injury, the effect of the injury has affected this part of the tissue. At least in the images, appearing to be above the level of injury. So we can see the areas of activity and our signal intensity change patterns, which are our responses, are characteristic of when we stimulate and where we stimulate. And the responses look like they do reveal really important details of the size, the level, the extent of the injury. And these changes over time, we expect them to reveal really important information. If we can see distinct differences in across different people with different conditions, we also expect to be able to see changes over time in a longitudinal study, the result of spontaneous recovery, or the effects of treatments. And so this is why we're hoping this will be a really useful tool for monitoring treatment and especially for outcome measures for clinical trials. And so, and an important final point is we can do this right now in any hospital. All we need is a thermal stimulation device. And we can do each fMRI run in about 7 minutes. We can tack this onto the end of a current MRI protocol without taking a lot of time or equipment. And so I'd like to thank, of course, this is like everything, a multidisciplinary project. We've got our group at Queen's University and Kingston General Hospital, and we have important collaboration with Michael Falings and his group, David Cadot and David Nicholas here in Toronto. So thank you very much.